My parents hawked my $590,000 diamond engagement ring. Made by my late fiancé, so my sister could recover at a luxury resort in Bali. I didn't shed a tear. I disappeared. Just not the way they imagined. What if the people you love most didn't just fail you, but actively broke you? My own family took the one thing left that connected me to my dead fiancé, and then they tried to erase me from my own story. But they had no idea what was coming next. The air in that house always felt heavy, almost suffocating, especially on Friday mornings. The Denver winter was finally letting go, pale sunlight struggling to cut through the blinds, painting tired gold stripes across my dusty dresser. It was the 2-year anniversary of Liam Miller's passing. A day that still felt like my entire world had just stopped spinning. Grief didn't make me openly weep anymore. Now, it was just this quiet, sharp ache under my ribs, a constant companion. That morning, I reached for the second drawer of my nightstand, my hand moving on instinct. Pure muscle memory. The familiar angle, the soft click of the wood sliding open. The velvet box, where Liam Miller's ring always rested, should have been there. Always. But it wasn't. My breath hitched. A cold, hollow gasp. I blinked, then yanked the drawer wider, frantically rummaging through tissues, old receipts, even a half-used candle wick I'd never thrown away. Nothing. No box, not even the delicate velvet cloth it usually came with. A cold, certain dread began to creep through my veins. This wasn't a mistake. My chest tightened, not in panic yet, but with a strange, stinging cold that pierced right through me. I walked downstairs, one sock still clinging to my foot, my hand gripping the banister so tightly my knuckles went white. My mother, Evelyn, was casually flipping through a magazine at the kitchen counter, sipping her coffee as if it were just another ordinary Friday. She didn't even look up. "Morning," she mumbled. "Mom." I tried to keep my voice steady, to force a semblance of calm. "Do you know where my ring is?" She turned a page, slow and deliberate, as if I was interrupting something crucial. "What ring?" My jaw tightened so hard I felt a throbbing in my temple. "The ring. Liam Miller's ring. The one he gave me." A slow blink. "Oh," she said, as if I'd asked about a forgotten grocery item. "That? We sold it." The air in the kitchen instantly became too thick to breathe. "You what?" She stirred her coffee, her gaze drifting to the window. Chloe needed help for her Bali retreat. Spiritual stuff. You weren't wearing it anymore, anyway. For a dizzying moment, I literally forgot how to draw air into my lungs. It wasn't just a ring. My father, David, his voice drifting from the hallway, confirmed it. "You haven't touched it in months, Isabella. We figured you didn't need it anymore." I spun around. There he was, arms folded, that familiar, tired condescension in his eyes. The same look he always gave me when I'd apparently failed to meet some unspoken expectation. Every single word I wanted to scream got lodged somewhere between my ribs and my throat. "You sold something that wasn't yours," I finally choked out. He just shrugged. "Well, technically, and..." "No." I cut him off, my voice surprisingly firm despite the tremor in my hands. "That ring was mine. Liam Miller designed it with me. We chose the diamond together. He had the band engraved inside." My mother rolled her eyes. "Isabella, it's not like you're still getting married." She said it like a joke, like Liam Miller had just stepped out for groceries. Not collapsed in the parking lot of a diner waiting for me. Not left a voicemail saying he was bringing my favorite pie. "He's dead." I snapped, the last word cracking like glass. "Not forgotten." My mother sighed again. That exhausted, put-upon look she wore whenever my emotions became too much. Chloe's finding herself. That retreat is life-changing. Then maybe she should have sold something of hers, I whispered, my voice barely audible. She doesn't have anything like that, my father muttered, without looking at me. And you weren't using it. I stumbled back, the entire world tilting on its axis. They hadn't just sold a ring. They'd sold the last tangible piece of him I had left. My anchor. My last connection. I turned and walked back up the stairs, each step heavy, deliberate, a silent accusation against the betrayal that echoed behind me. Back in my room, I stared at the empty drawer again. But this time, something else caught my eye. Tucked away in the back, folded almost carelessly, was the deep navy velvet cloth, embroidered with white daisies. It felt limp. Hollow. Devoid of the precious weight it once cradled. I sank to the floor, the cloth resting in my lap, my fingers tracing the delicate stitches. I remembered Liam Miller's voice, clear as day. The daisies remind me of our first road trip, Isabella, when they bloomed wild behind that dusty motel in Utah. I stayed there, just breathing, feeling too much and yet nothing at all. The world outside kept spinning, indifferent. But something inside me had shattered and gone still. A low, steady whisper escaped my lips. They didn't just sell a ring. They sold what's left of me. I sat for a long time. Maybe an hour. Maybe an eternity. Just me. That gaping, empty drawer. And the daisy-stitched velvet cloth. The only tangible proof he'd ever asked me to be his wife. Sunday night descended, a suffocating blanket. I hadn't left my room. Hadn't eaten much beyond stale crackers and water. Barely touched my phone. I was terrified of it. Of Evelyn's texts, demanding, misunderstanding, or worse, Chloe's performative ignorance. But eventually, I powered it on. Not because I was ready, but because I was tired of hiding. The screen blared to life, and my stomach immediately twisted into a knot. There she was. Chloe. Posing on a glossy wooden yoga deck in Ubud, bathed in perfect sunlight, a garland of flowers around her neck, arms outstretched in that practiced surrender to the universe pose she'd mastered since she was a bored teenager in Sunday school. The caption screamed, "Healing is expensive, but so worth it. Grateful to my amazing family for believing in my journey." A heart emoji. A lotus. The comments exploded. "You inspire me. Such a brave soul. This is how healing looks. She's glowing like actual light." I stared until my hands began to tremble. The most terrifying part. I couldn't even cry. The grief, the betrayal, had nowhere left to go. She was using Liam Miller's ring money, my inheritance, to fund her social media rebirth. I scrolled further and it only got worse. Tagged stories, reposts from yoga brands, even a feature in a wellness blog, From Pain to Power, Chloe's transformational journey. There were paragraphs about overcoming generational dysfunction, about choosing the hard path of self-love. I nearly laughed. A bitter, hollow sound. My name wasn't mentioned once. Not a single line. No one knew that while she was stretching into the sunset, I was sleeping on the floor of my childhood bedroom because my parents had given away the bed I'd bought after Liam Miller died. Too big for one person anyway, they'd said. My mind reeled, flashing through a lifetime of Chloe's tantrums, slammed doors, and Evelyn's pleading whispers, "You're the strong one, Isabella. Help me keep the peace." It was a role I'd never asked for, a burden I never got to lay down. Liam Miller used to tell me, "You don't always have to be the one holding the house together while it burns." But it seemed I hadn't held it well enough, because now they were dancing in the flames, and I was just the ashes. Around 8:30 that evening, I finally pulled myself together enough to drive to the cemetery. The wind had picked up, raw and biting, and the old gate creaked a mournful protest as I pushed it open. I walked the narrow path between headstones, carrying nothing but my phone and the leaden ache in my chest. When I reached Liam Miller's stone, I didn't kneel. I just stood there, a cold statue in the twilight. "They used your ring, Liam Miller," I whispered, my voice raw against the wind. "They sold it so she could post gratitude quotes from Bali." The wind rustled the dried leaves at my feet, and I swear something inside me cracked just a little more. Back home, I collapsed onto the floor again, scrolling through Chloe's latest. Nearly 2,000 likes. A drone shot over rice fields, her mid-spin, arms outstretched. The caption, "Sometimes you have to leave the noise to find your soul." Before the shame or second-guessing could catch up, my fingers flew across the screen. Hope the healing was worth it. I paid for it. Send. The comment vanished into the sea of praise. 10 minutes later, it was gone. Deleted. At 10:42 p.m., my phone buzzed. A text from Evelyn. "Isabella, let your sister have this moment. Don't start drama." Drama. That's what they called it. Not erasure. Not betrayal. Drama. I didn't reply. I just stared at that message, rereading it until the words blurred, then scrolled back up to Chloe's glowing face. People think grief is loud. The wailing, the sobbing, the storming out. But it's not. It's being slowly erased, quietly, while the world applauds the person holding the eraser. I wasn't trying to start drama. I just didn't want to disappear again. But in this family, simply existing outside their carefully curated script was apparently an act of rebellion. 3 days bled into each other since my comment, like me, vanished from Chloe's post. That mid-morning, I sat at the same kitchen table I'd eaten cereal at since I was 7. A small, neat folder lay before me, its contents precisely stacked: partial receipts for the ring, Liam Miller's old email confirming the appraisal, and a note from his parents, written in grief-soaked cursive, thanking me for caring for the ring until it became part of your new chapter together. I pushed the folder across the table towards my father, David. He didn't even touch it, his eyes still glued to the Denver Post. "You keep going like this, Isabella," he said, his voice flat. "And you'll ruin your own peace. We can't undo what's done." I watched him stir his coffee, as if the swirling liquid was the only thing that truly mattered. "But you can at least acknowledge what it was," I said, fighting to keep my voice from shaking. He sighed, folded the paper with a snap, and finally looked at me. "Isabella, you've been living here rent-free for 2 years. We've given you more than enough. It's just a ring." Then he slid something else across the table. A thin white envelope embossed with a gold letterhead. The moment I saw the law firm's name, my stomach flipped. I opened it slowly. Inside, a formal note: "This correspondence confirms that all contents within the property at our address fall under the legal ownership of Evelyn and David Blay." I stopped reading. They didn't just want the ring. They wanted me to know that nothing here, absolutely nothing, belonged to me. Later that day, the sky hung heavy and gray, the kind of oppressive color that makes your bones ache. I drifted into the garage, pulled by some unconscious need for air that hadn't passed through their mouths. I sat on a crate labeled Isabella College, brushing off a film of dust. Inside were old yearbooks, a forgotten guitar strap, and beneath it all, a small sealed envelope. My name in Liam Miller's careful, unmistakable handwriting. I'd never opened it. My hands trembled slightly as I broke the seal. Inside was just a sticky note, faded, but intact: "Don't let them take your voice or your worth." I didn't move for a long time. It wasn't just a note. It was a gut punch from someone who always saw me, even when I didn't know I was vanishing. I slipped it into my wallet, folded it behind my driver's license, behind the version of me the world could see. That night, dinner was a predictable tableau of meatloaf, green beans, and erasure served hot. Midway through the meal, Evelyn raised her glass. Here's to Chloe. Her growth, her healing, her courage. What a transformation. I sat perfectly still. No one looked my way, not even a passing glance to check if the other daughter was breathing. I lifted my glass halfway, then slowly lowered it and stood. "I'll be upstairs," I said, my voice flat. My father muttered just loud enough for me to hear, "That girl needs perspective." I didn't answer. I walked to my room and pulled out a dusty plastic storage bin from under the bed. Bills, receipts, copies of insurance forms, email printouts, statements from my joint account with Liam Miller, things I hadn't looked at in a year. I didn't know what I was looking for, but I knew I needed something that wasn't theirs. Something that reminded me I used to have a life, a love, a voice. The scanner hummed quietly as I fed in page after page. I created folders. I labeled timelines. Somewhere along the way, the tears stopped. The desperate plea for acknowledgement faded. Something inside shifted from wanting to be heard to an iron refusal to be silenced. They'd taken the ring, but they hadn't taken the truth. Not yet. I didn't know what I was building, but I knew, with every fiber of my being, that I needed something that was definitively mine. By Thursday night, the stack of documents on my desk had doubled. Receipts, bank transfers, insurance forms. Each one meticulously scanned, labeled, and filed into a folder aptly named Truth. There was no grand strategy, no legal motion drafted, just me pulling thread after thread, desperately trying to weave them into something solid before someone else could yank them away. Rain tapped softly against the windows, a steady rhythm that blurred the outside world, perfectly mirroring the chaos inside me. I was highlighting a paragraph in Liam Miller's old email when my hand brushed the trackpad. An ancient browser tab popped open. One I must have bookmarked a year ago. A podcast autoplay kicked in, and then I heard her voice. "Healing begins when we decide to release the roles other people force us into." Chloe. I froze. My hand hovered mid-air, caught between slamming the laptop shut and a desperate, morbid need to hear every single word. The host chirped, "That's so powerful, Chloe. Can you give us an example of that release?" A pause. A distinct sip. Then I had to separate myself from the grief in our family. Some people, they cling to pain like it's a personality. Every muscle in my body locked. I couldn't even blink. She was talking about me. I kept listening. I walked away. It cost me so much, but I chose joy. I gave up everything. Even objects tied to trauma. You can't move forward while dragging symbols of emotional debt. I mean, rings. They're just objects soaked in pain. I don't remember hitting pause. I just remember staring at the screen, my reflection staring back from the dark monitor like a stranger. 50,000 listens. 50,000 people had heard my story, twisted beyond recognition, sold back to them as her brand. She'd turned Liam Miller's ring into a metaphor for toxicity. My grief, our love, reduced to cheap clickbait. I didn't scream. I didn't throw the laptop across the room. I just sat there. My fingers hovered, then moved, slow and deliberate. I downloaded the episode, saved it into the Truth folder. Then I opened a new document, titling it, Timeline of Misuse. That night, the file grew steadily, my own ragged breath the only sound in the room, apart from the soft rain and the crushing weight of betrayal. Around 10, I grabbed my coat and keys, slipping out silently. I didn't tell anyone. I just needed to scan a few more things, mostly Liam Miller's letters. The local coffee shop had a scanner for late-nighters. I drove in silence, the windshield wipers setting a slow, hypnotic rhythm. The barista, thankfully, didn't ask questions. I ordered a black tea and found a corner. One by one, I fed his letters into the machine, his handwriting growing shakier in the later ones. Each scan made the truth heavier, not lighter. I love how you see people, one line read. Even when they've forgotten how to see you. I pressed my hand over that page, a silent vow. I didn't want revenge. I just refused to be rewritten. By the time I returned home, it was close to midnight. I changed into an old sweatshirt, pulled my hair into a messy knot, and sat cross-legged on the floor by my desk. In the drawer beside me, still folded carefully after all these years, clean and soft, was that velvet cloth, the one with the white daisies embroidered in its corners. The one that once held the ring. I took the USB drive with the podcast episode and wrapped it gently in the cloth. Some things you wrap not to protect, but to remember. I placed it carefully in my purse, zipped it shut, letting it sit there like a silent anchor. I wasn't ready to confront them. Not yet. But something fundamental had shifted inside me. I wasn't breaking anymore. I was collecting. It wasn't about proving them wrong. It was about finally, irrevocably remembering I'd been right all along. Friday evening draped itself over the house like a sodden, unwanted coat. Outside, the gray light hadn't shifted in hours. Inside, silence pressed in from every wall. My parents, Evelyn and David, were out for dinner, leaving behind the faint trace of Evelyn's lavender perfume and a Tupperware of untouched meatloaf. I stayed upstairs, my door ajar, my laptop dark. My body ached from sitting, but I couldn't bring myself to lie down. I needed something, anything, to remind me this house hadn't always felt like a cage. So I dug. In the back of my closet, an old, brittle plastic bin, the kind that cracked if you looked at it wrong. It held the relics of a girl I barely recognized. Sharpie-labeled CDs, elementary school birthday cards, faded Polaroids of scraped knees and missing baby teeth, and a stack of mini DV tapes. I hadn't seen them in years. I plugged the camcorder into the wall, rummaged through the tape drawer, and pulled one marked, Isabella, 6th B-Day. The screen flickered to life. Static buzzed, then muted, jittery color. There I was, a little girl in a yellow sundress, beaming beside a chocolate-frosted cake with 6 candles. I remembered that dress. I begged Evelyn for it, convinced it made me feel like sunshine. Then Chloe appeared on screen, 8 years old and already taller. Without a word, she grabbed my head and shoved my face into the cake. I flinched. Both my past self on the tape and my current self on the floor. The camera shook with laughter. Evelyn's and David's voices joining in. Chloe, oh my God, Evelyn gasped, more amusement than reprimand. My little self wiped frosting from my eyelashes, looking around, a desperate plea in her eyes. No one moved. The clip ended. I paused the video, my hand gripping the edge of the desk, tasting that same bitter silence I must have swallowed that day. I whispered to the empty room, maybe this is just how it's always going to be. The front door downstairs creaked open. Heels clacked on tile, keys jingled into the bowl, then Evelyn's low murmur, likely bidding David good night. But instead of going to her room, her footsteps ascended. A soft knock. Before I could answer, the door swung open. No warning. No permission. She stood there, holding a small navy blue velvet box, its corners slightly worn with age. Her eyes didn't quite meet mine. I was cleaning out the closet, she said softly. Found these. Nana had promised them to you, remember? Figured maybe now's a good time. She sat on the edge of my bed without asking. Opened the box. Inside, a pair of pearl drop earrings, delicate, familiar, almost sparkling with false hope. I blinked, unsure what game we were playing. She didn't mean to hurt you, sweetie, Evelyn murmured, smoothing her skirt. Chloe just handles things differently. And we thought you'd moved on from all that. All that. As if grief was a shoebox to be tucked under the bed and forgotten. The earrings gleamed in the dim light, clean and cold. I almost reached for them. I almost let the warmth of nostalgia dull the sharpened edge inside me. I almost said thank you. I almost forgave her. Then a buzz. My phone lit up on the desk. A message from Hannah, a friend from college. Thought you should see this. I tapped the link. It was Chloe's Instagram story again. Cross-legged on a tropical patio, probably Bali. A pale smoothie in her hand. Perfect lighting, softening every syllable of her syrup-sweet voice. Forgiveness is so powerful. Even when people lash out, I know it's just their pain talking. I rise above. I stared at the screen, unable to breathe. That was about me. About the deleted comment, the velvet cloth, the ring, the earrings. Every ounce of my restraint was being weaponized, repackaged as her saint-like patience. A wave of scorching humiliation hit me fast and brutal. A slap I should have seen coming. Evelyn left not long after, telling me to try and get some rest. I said nothing, just nodded. The door clicked shut behind her. Downstairs, the dishwasher hummed. The house returned to its quiet hum, but something inside me wasn't quiet anymore. I opened my laptop. The folder marked Truth waited like an open mouth. I added the screenshot of Chloe's story. Then I retrieved Nana's inheritance letter, the one listing my name in careful cursive right beside the word earrings. I scanned it. Then slowly, I opened my phone's recorder. I spoke into the dark, my voice low and steady. I'm not doing this to expose them. I'm doing this so I never forget again who they really are. And then I wrapped the earrings in a separate cloth, sliding them into the drawer, not to use, not to wear, just to remember. It wasn't just betrayal anymore. It was a pattern I'd been conditioned, trained to forgive. But that morning, something profound shifted. I woke before the sun had fully climbed over the rooftops. The house wrapped in that muffled quiet only cloudy mornings bring. I didn't wait for coffee, didn't scroll. I went in my closet, pulled out the navy blazer I hadn't touched since Liam Miller's memorial, and slipped it over a crisp button-down. The sleeves were a little looser now, but it still fit. Standing before the mirror, I didn't see someone desperate to prove a point. I saw someone finished waiting. The velvet cloth lay on my nightstand, folded carefully around the flash drive. Inside it, receipts, scanned letters, a copy of Nana's will, the raw podcast audio, screenshots of Chloe's posts, and my own quiet voice recording. I placed the entire package into a clear envelope, slid it into a folio, and zipped it shut. I left no note, sent no text. I simply walked out the front door as if heading to a mundane dentist appointment. No tension, no fiery rage, just clean air and an unshakable purpose. 15 minutes later, I pulled into the parking lot of a co-working space, tucked neatly between a dog groomer and a yoga studio. Caleb, the soft-spoken manager in his 20s, handed me a key card without much small talk, which I deeply appreciated. I chose a corner table by the window, the light rain tapping a gentle rhythm against the glass. My laptop hummed to life as I opened the legal document templates Liam Miller's estate lawyers had shared with me, just in case. I filled in the blanks with cold, hard clarity. Item 1, 4.1 carat engagement ring, purchased jointly with Liam Miller 3 months before his passing. Statement, property held in trust until marriage, therefore, sole ownership defaulted to the surviving party, Isabella Blay. I cross-referenced every entry with dated email threads, photo timestamps, and the notarized letter Liam Miller's mother had sent, confirming the family's explicit intent for me to keep the ring. I added a detailed affidavit describing the events around the sale and the profound psychological harm caused. At precisely 10:42 a.m., I clicked send. The documents flew to Pfizer and LSLP, the firm that had handled Liam Miller's affairs, addressed directly to Samantha Mira, a partner I remembered for her matter-of-fact warmth. Then I sat back, not triumphant, not vengeful, just still. No tears, no shaking. I closed my laptop, leaned into the chair, and let the rain outside blur the edges of the moment. Across from me, a ceramic cup of untouched coffee. I finally lifted it to my lips. It was cold, but it was mine. Later that afternoon, I remained at the co-working space. The team next door was rehearsing for a non-profit event, their laughter occasionally seeping through the walls. One stepped out, smiled at me, and I nodded back. I opened another folder on my laptop. This one had nothing to do with my family, at least not directly. It was for the Reclaiming What Was Always Yours initiative, an annual women's leadership gala I'd been quietly funding in Liam Miller's memory since last fall. He'd always believed legacy didn't need a name, just a ripple, a light switched on for someone else in the dark. The event was scheduled for next week at the Meadowbrook Center, an upscale venue just outside the city. The floral arrangements, speaker stipends, even the custom signage, all paid for under a discreet foundation I'd created. I double-checked the PowerPoint slides. One photo stood out, Liam Miller and I, years ago, volunteering at a career panel for single mothers. I remembered how he'd stayed an hour late just to help one woman perfect her resume. That slide would close the night. Above it, in small print, in honor of those who give quietly. I sent the final slide deck to the event coordinator. As I packed up to leave, my phone buzzed. A text from Evelyn, "You got mail. Looks like a gala invite. Chloe got one, too. I think they want her to speak." How wonderful. I stared at the screen for a long second. Then I laughed, just once. A soft, dry sound, like the punchline of a joke only I understood. I didn't please reply. I didn't respond at all. I didn't need to be on the stage. I'd already built the microphone. Let them walk into the spotlight. They just didn't know who lit it. I arrived at the Meadowbrook Center just before sunset. The event space shimmered with soft candlelight and glass bowls filled with floating white daisies, my signature touch, I thought, spotting them immediately. Evelyn would have chosen roses, red or nothing at all, but tonight wasn't hers to curate. I checked in quietly at the front desk. No name tag, no fuss, just a light touch on my elbow from the coordinator as she handed me a folded program. She didn't recognize me. Perfect. Across the room, Chloe glided through the main doors in a custom-looking white gown, her hair pinned in deliberate, perfect waves. Evelyn walked beside her, arm in arm, whispering praise like a proud stage mother coaching a pageant queen. "You deserve this, darling," she purred, just loud enough for anyone near the champagne table to overhear. I stood alone in a corner for a while, not hidden, just utterly unbothered. My simple black dress had no sparkle, no statement, just presence. My clutch was tucked close to my ribs. The velvet cloth neatly folded, pressing against the sealed envelope I hadn't let out of my sight all week. The music softened. The room hushed. The host stepped onto the stage. A few polite claps echoed. Dinner plates were cleared. Wine refilled. The tempo of the evening had begun. Then the surprise guest speaker was announced. Chloe took the microphone with practiced poise. Even her footsteps sounded rehearsed. I could almost hear Evelyn inhale sharply like a proud director behind the curtain. "Grief," Chloe began, her voice smooth and resonant, "is a journey, but some people wear it like a badge they refuse to take off." My fingers clenched around the edges of my clutch. "Tonight, I want to talk about letting go, about choosing not to be defined by what hurt you, but by what you did with the pain." She never once said my name, but I was in every sentence. A living shadow standing behind her words. "I had to release things that tied me to darkness," she said, a soft, manufactured smile playing on her lips, "objects, expectations, even family wounds. I chose light." The audience nodded, a few murmuring as if at a sermon. Slowly, deliberately, I moved toward the event coordinator at the edge of the room. Her headset was perched over one ear, her eyes on the screen cues. "Excuse me," I said quietly, offering the sealed envelope. "This is a feature donor message. It needs to be played now, before the final speaker." She blinked, uncertain. I wasn't told. "It was requested ahead," I stated, my voice calm. "Check the card inside." She opened it, read a few lines. Her brow furrowed, then slowly lifted. "Yes. Okay, I'll cue it up." I returned to my corner. Chloe was still on stage, thanking the organizers, the city, the brave women here tonight who've overcome so much. The applause began before she even finished, and then, it stopped. The house lights dimmed slightly. The screen behind the stage flickered to black. White text faded in memory of Liam Miller Blay. A profound hush fell over the room. The video opened on me, sitting in a quiet room, speaking directly into the lens. "My name is Isabella Blay. I don't need recognition tonight. I already had what mattered, and I lost it. 2 years ago, I buried my fiancé. We had picked out a ring together, a symbol of our future. It was taken, sold. The money used for someone else's journey, without my knowledge. That ring didn't just represent a promise. It held grief. Memory. Love." The screen shifted to a photo, Liam Miller smiling, me beside him, holding his hand. "I funded this gala quietly, in his name." The theme, reclaiming what was always yours, wasn't just about leadership. It was about memory and truth. There was no anger in my voice, only crystal clarity. "Sometimes," I concluded, my face filling the final frame, "the ones who suffer most are expected to stay silent so the loudest can heal." The screen faded to black. The room didn't exhale. It simply froze. Evelyn's hand flew to her mouth as if she'd been physically slapped. Chloe, still standing near the stage, was frozen mid-pose, her carefully constructed smile crumbling. A photographer's flash went off, catching her face, twisted between confusion and naked fear. I didn't wait to hear what was said. As I walked towards the door, I heard whispers erupt behind me. "She paid for this." That was her fiancé. I didn't look back. Didn't pause for applause. I stepped into the cool night air, letting the chill remind me, I wasn't invisible. I just wasn't theirs anymore. I didn't need applause. I needed them to hear the truth in a room that couldn't look away. The next morning, my phone pulsed on the nightstand like a frantic heartbeat, warning me before I even opened my eyes. 38 unread messages, 12 missed calls, notifications piled high like digital ash from a fire I'd quietly lit. I opened Instagram. Chloe's face filled the first story tile, dramatically, artfully crying. I was ambushed, her voice cracked. Last night should have been a celebration of healing, not an attack. Another slide, "She's weaponizing grief," read a caption beneath a clip of her dabbing her eyes with a tissue, perfectly manicured, fingers trembling. Another clip, her face turned slightly away, as if unaware the camera was still rolling. I tried so hard to include her, but sometimes family can be your worst enemy. Comments flooded in, "Wow, this is so sad. She needs to get help. Your sister sounds toxic." By the time I opened Twitter, 2 local blogs had already picked up her carefully crafted narrative, "Resilience Coach Faces Family Sabotage at Women's Gala." It was so fast, so calculated. A text from Evelyn came through, "You've broken this family apart. Are you happy now?" Followed by a missed call from my father, David. No message, just a digital silence that screamed enough. I blocked them both. Then a message from Caleb, the co-working space manager. He'd known Liam Miller, known me long before I learned to swallow my voice. "Don't let them own the final word. You've come too far to be pushed back into the dark. That was enough. I got out of bed. I pulled on jeans and a plain navy sweater. No makeup, no earrings, just the velvet cloth neatly folded into my jacket pocket and a transcript I'd printed that morning, a kind of truth I didn't need to shout, but wasn't going to hide either. The drive to the family house was short, the turns ingrained by muscle memory, even though the place hadn't felt like home in years. The front door was cracked open as if it had been expecting me. Chloe was pacing in the living room, her hair in a frantic knot, phone clutched in one hand. Her voice came in strained rehearsals, practicing damage control out loud. Something about emotional abuse. Something about her journey. She froze when she saw me. You shouldn't be here, she snapped, her voice tight, but her hands trembled. I won't be long, I said, stepping inside. My calm a stark contrast to her agitation. I walked to the coffee table and laid down the transcript. The paper, thin as it was, felt heavy. Her eyes darted to it. What's that? I didn't answer. Instead, I gently unfolded the velvet cloth. Empty now. Just a soft square memory. I placed it beneath the transcript. It's your voice, I said. From the podcast, the one where you call me a grief addict. Chloe's face drained of all color. You don't understand how media works. I understand how truth works. She stared at me, lips slightly parted, but no sound came out. I stood there for another second, letting the profound silence settle. Then I turned. Evelyn stepped into the hallway just as I reached the door. Her eyes were wide, as if she'd just woken up to a reality she hadn't chosen. We're family, Isabella, she said, a faint tremor in her voice. Blood. I stopped, not out of hesitation, but out of absolute clarity. Blood means nothing without respect. I'm not here to belong anymore, I told her. I'm here to break the cycle. She didn't respond, just stood there, lost, as if she couldn't find her script. I walked past her without flinching, out into the cool air. The sky had started to clear slightly, just enough to let in a thin band of light, the kind of light you have to actively look for. I slipped the velvet cloth back into my pocket. It felt different now. Clean. Done. I didn't leave because I hated them. I left because I finally loved myself more. The morning light in Napa was different now, softer, less accusatory. It didn't pierce, it warmed. A gentle breeze rolled off the vineyards. As I turned the key in the lock of my new studio door. The sign above the entrance caught the light, shimmering, Miller and Blay, crafted with memory. I stepped inside and flipped the lights on. The space wasn't huge, but it felt expansive in a way the Blay family house never had. Warm wood floors, brass fixtures, a row of workbenches facing wide windows that framed the rolling hills like an oil painting. The walls were a soothing cream, my tools lined in silent, purposeful order. Pliers, molds, flame torch, tumblers. I hadn't realized how much I missed the scent of metal warming under heat. It was a feeling suspended between hope and quiet finality. That first week, foot traffic was steady. A young couple from San Francisco wandered in, searching for wedding bands with soul. A woman in her 70s asked if I could set a locket into a ring so she could carry her husband's photo, not just as memory. Then there were the quiet ones, locals who didn't say much, only looked around then whispered, "You're the one from the gala, right?" I just nodded, offered a soft smile. Nothing more. On a shelf in the back corner, under a gentle spotlight, was a glass case. Inside, folded perfectly in half, was that familiar velvet cloth. Framed beneath it, a handwritten note read, "This piece is not for sale." It cost everything to make. And beneath the cloth, a simple band, diamond and steel, seamlessly fused, etched along its edge with one delicate daisy. Not ornamental, not flashy, just quiet and certain. One afternoon, a little girl wandered in with her parents. She pressed her nose to the glass, pointing. "Who made that one?" she asked. I crouched down beside her, resting my arms on my knees. "Someone who used to be silent," I said. She turned to me, her brows scrunched. "Are they better now?" I smiled, a real, soft smile. "She's still learning," I told her. "But she's not silent anymore." Weeks passed without a word from Evelyn or Chloe. No calls, no texts. But that in itself was an answer. Then one Saturday, a short message arrived from Scarlett, an old family friend I hadn't spoken to since college. "Saw your tribute at the gala. Your mom never said anything, but she kept the video on her desktop." I read the message twice, then I let it sit. I didn't reply, didn't forward it to anyone. Just let it be. Sometimes an apology doesn't come with words. But that doesn't mean you have to wait your whole life to hear it. I walked over to the workbench, slid open the top drawer. Inside, the original yellowed receipt for the velvet box. I placed it beside Liam Miller's final note, the one that had lived in my wallet all this time: "Don't let them take your voice or your worth." Outside, the clouds had lifted, sun spilling across the cobblestones. I walked out front, breathed in the fresh air, and flipped the sign to open. As the day wore on, I melted silver, set stones, sketched a new line of pendants. There was no rush, no frantic energy, just motion. Quiet. Mine. In the background, an old folk song played low and grainy on the stereo. I didn't know the lyrics, but the melody felt familiar, like something I'd heard before I was old enough to name it. I looked again at the cloth under the glass. It had once held a symbol of a future that never arrived. Now it held nothing, and that, in its own way, meant everything. I lost something that was supposed to last forever. Then I lost people who were never meant to leave. But in all that loss, I found something quieter, stronger, and irrevocably mine. This time, no one gets to sell me. This journey, it broke me down, then built me back up. My phone, charging on a small shelf near the counter, vibrated with a relentless urgency I'd come to associate with the aftermath of my own calculated truth bombs. It hadn't stopped since the gala, and the initial wave of anger and calculated victimhood from Chloe, Evelyn, and David had given way to something colder, more desperate. I'd blocked them, yes, but the digital world has a way of finding back doors. Friends, distant relatives, even casual acquaintances were suddenly reaching out. Not always with support, but with a palpable sense of curiosity, unease, and sometimes outright judgment. Chloe's ambush narrative had indeed taken hold in some circles. For a day or two, she dominated the wellness influencer space, portraying herself as the victim of a toxic family member's jealousy. She even did an Instagram live, tears streaming artfully down her face, talking about the pain of chosen family, subtly implying I was projecting my own unhealed trauma onto her journey. It was textbook manipulation, a performance for her audience. But it infuriated me to see the comments. The overwhelming wave of sympathy directed her way: "Stay strong, Queen. Cut toxic people out. Your light shines through." But the internet, for all its fickle nature, also has a long memory and a thirst for spectacle. My video, raw and unpolished, resonated with a different kind of audience. It wasn't just the gala attendees who saw it. Someone, God bless them, had clipped my segment and posted it on a popular short-form video platform, juxtaposing it directly with Chloe's tearful performance. The caption was simple: "Which sister do you believe?" That's when the tide began to turn. Fast. Brutal. Unflinching. Anonymous accounts, fueled by a collective disgust for performative victimhood, started digging. They found Chloe's old posts from before Bali. The ones where she flaunted designer clothes and lavish vacations, completely contradicting her struggling artist finding herself persona. They found screenshots of her spiritual retreats that were more like luxury resorts. And then, the ultimate nail in her carefully constructed coffin, a few enterprising online sleuths discovered the sale of Liam Miller's ring, matching the description to a high-end jewelry auction house that had posted about a significant private collection being sold around the same time. The timing was too perfect, too damning. The digital mob, once her fervent admirers, turned on her with a vengeance. Her comments section became a war zone. Where's the ring money, Chloe? Is this what healing looks like? You stole from your grieving sister. The "from pain to power" narrative crumbled, exposing the calculating grifter beneath. Her sponsored posts dried up almost overnight. The wellness blog that had featured her quietly removed the article. Her carefully curated image, built on borrowed empathy and my shattered grief, imploded. The satisfaction was, I admit, immense and chilling. It wasn't revenge in the traditional sense, but it was justice delivered by 1,000 anonymous cuts, and it was glorious. Evelyn and David's initial fury at me turned to quiet panic as Chloe's empire crumbled. Their texts shifted from anger to desperate pleas for me to make it stop, to defend your sister. I simply blocked their new numbers. The only communication I received was a terse email from Evelyn forwarding me a news article about Chloe losing a major brand deal, with a single line, "See what you've done?" I didn't reply. What I had done was tell the truth. What they had done was enable a predator. And victimize their own child. My business, Miller and Blay, began to quietly flourish. Not just from the local foot traffic, but from the unexpected ripples of the gala. People who resonated with my story, not for the drama, but for the underlying message of reclaiming oneself and one's truth, started seeking me out. They came from across the country, asking for custom pieces that honored lost loved ones, celebrated resilience, or marked a personal turning point. A woman, a survivor of domestic abuse, commissioned a ring from me engraved with a single, defiant phoenix. A man whose small business had been stolen by a former partner asked for a necklace shaped like a compass, guiding him to a new beginning. They weren't just buying jewelry. They were investing in symbols of their own enduring strength, their own reclaimed narratives. Each piece I crafted felt less like a transaction and more like a quiet act of shared defiance, a testament to the power of personal truth. The legal process for the ring, however, was a different beast. Samantha Mira, Liam Miller's estate lawyer, a sharp woman with eyes that missed nothing, was immediately on it. My detailed affidavit, coupled with the notarized letter from Liam Miller's mother, the ring's appraisal, and the time-stamped emails built an undeniable case. The firm informed Evelyn and David that they were being formally pursued for the fraudulent sale of an asset legally belonging to me. Their initial response was predictable: indignation, denial, and a counterclaim that the ring was a gift and therefore theirs to dispose of. But the evidence was overwhelming. The clause about the trust until marriage, the explicit intent from Liam Miller's family, my clear ownership, it painted a picture they couldn't whitewash. Legal letters started arriving at the family home, not just to me, but demanding their appearance in court. The quiet desperation in Evelyn's voice returned in the single voicemail she left me, bypassing my block from an unfamiliar number. "Isabella, please. We can't afford this. David is so stressed. Chloe is devastated. This is tearing us apart." She still didn't acknowledge my pain, my loss, their betrayal. She just wanted the inconvenient consequences to disappear. I didn't return the call. This wasn't about vengeance for me, but about justice, about establishing a boundary so clear and unyielding that they would never again dare to cross it. The gala's success and the unexpected viral spread of my story also opened doors for reclaiming what was always yours. Instead of just quietly funding it, I was asked to become a board member. My narrative, once dismissed as drama, was now seen as a powerful testament to the initiative's core mission. I channeled more resources into it, ensuring that other women who had their stories, their voices, their very selves erased had a platform, a means to rebuild. It became an extension of my studio, my way of turning personal pain into collective empowerment. A few months passed in this new rhythm. My studio became a haven. The work was fulfilling. The stories shared by my clients, inspiring. I made new friends in Napa. People who knew Isabella, the jeweler, the quiet woman with a strong spirit. Not Isabella, the sister who buried her fiancé and fought her family. There was a warmth here, a sense of belonging I hadn't felt in years. One crisp autumn afternoon, a few weeks before the court date for the ring's retrieval, I received a certified letter, not from the lawyers, but from Liam Miller's parents. A handwritten note, heartfelt and sincere. They had seen my video. They said they had always known my deep love for Liam Miller, and their hearts ached for what I had endured. They expressed their profound regret that they hadn't intervened sooner when they heard whispers of the ring being sold. They enclosed a check for the full appraised value of the ring, stating it was the least they could do to right a profound wrong, and that the legal action was right and just. It was an unexpected gesture of profound empathy, a soothing balm for an old wound. I didn't keep the money. Instead, I donated it to Reclaiming What Was Always Yours, specifically earmarked for a scholarship fund for women rebuilding their lives after financial or emotional exploitation. The day of the court hearing arrived. I went alone, armed with my conviction and Samantha Mira's calm assurance. Evelyn and David were there, looking drawn and pale. Chloe, surprisingly, was also present, though she kept her distance, her usual composure replaced by a brittle defensiveness. The judge listened patiently as Samantha laid out the meticulous evidence, my affidavit, the corroborating documents, the email from Liam Miller's mother. The defense, scrambling, tried to paint me as vindictive, as opportunistically trying to profit from my grief. They even brought up Chloe's healing journey again, framing the ring sale as a compassionate act to free me from trauma. It was grotesque, but the judge, a no-nonsense woman with sharp, intelligent eyes, was unmoved. She read the notarized letter from Liam Miller's mother. She looked at the trust clause. She looked at the evidence of the ring's sale and its value. She looked at me, then at Evelyn and David, then at Chloe. Her verdict was swift and unequivocal. The ring, she declared, was unequivocally mine. Evelyn and David were ordered to pay damages for its illegal sale, covering not only the ring's value, but also a significant sum for emotional distress given the circumstances of Liam Miller's death. Furthermore, they were ordered to pay all legal fees. She issued a stern warning against any further attempts to interfere with my property or well-being. She didn't scold, didn't moralize. She simply laid down the law, cold and hard. I didn't feel triumph, just a deep, quiet exhale. It was done. The legal battle was over. As I walked out of the courtroom, Samantha Mira at my side, I saw Evelyn and David huddled together, their faces etched with defeat. Chloe stood slightly apart, furiously typing on her phone, as if already crafting her next victim narrative. Our eyes met across the crowded hallway. Hers were filled with a mixture of anger, resentment, and a flicker of something that might have been fear. Mine were simply clear. There was no hatred, no lingering desire for revenge, just a vast empty space where they used to be. The resolution wasn't a tearful family reunion. Nor was it a grand act of forgiveness. It was the definitive severing of cords that had long since frayed and poisoned. I didn't need their apology to heal. I didn't need their understanding to thrive. I simply needed them to stop hurting me. And the law, for once, had given me that. Back in Napa, life settled into a new, deeper groove. Miller and Blay wasn't just a business. It was a testament. My workbench, once a solitary place of crafting, now felt like a conduit for stories, for resilience. The daisy-etched band under the glass case remained, a quiet sentinel. People would ask about its significance. I'd tell them, not the whole story, but enough. It represents finding your voice after it's been taken, I'd say. It represents understanding that some things are priceless, not for their material value, but for the story they carry. I still got occasional messages. Scarlett would sometimes send an update, always careful not to pry, but offering a window into their lives. Chloe's brand was irrevocably damaged. She tried to rebrand, to pivot, but the internet didn't forget. Her healing journey had become a cautionary tale. Evelyn and David were struggling financially, trying to deal with the court-ordered payments. They had sold the family home, moving into a smaller place. They were, in a way, facing their own consequences. Consequences that weren't imposed by me, but were the natural outgrowth of their choices. Did I feel bad for them? Sometimes a flicker of an old, familiar pain would stir. A pang for the family I once had, for the mother and father who used to cherish me, for the sister who was supposed to be my confidant. But that flicker was quickly overshadowed by the profound peace I now carried. That familiar longing was replaced by the knowledge that I had built something real, something honest, something that was entirely, irrevocably mine. The sun still spilled across the cobblestones outside my studio, low and golden in the late afternoon. The air smelled of autumn leaves and the faint metallic scent of my work. An old folk song, a melody I still couldn't quite place, played softly on the radio. It was a tune of enduring strength, of quiet perseverance. I glanced at the velvet cloth under the glass again. It still held nothing, no ring, no tangible representation of a past that had been stolen and then painstakingly reclaimed. But now that emptiness was filled not with grief or betrayal, but with a profound sense of self-possession. It held the space for what I chose to put there. I lost something that was supposed to last forever. Then I lost people who were never meant to leave. But in all that loss, in the ashes of what was, I found something quieter, stronger, and irrevocably mine. I found Isabella. And this time, no one, not a single soul, gets to sell me. I closed my eyes for a moment, letting the gentle melody wash over me. I wasn't just a survivor. I was a creator, a rebuilder, and the greatest masterpiece I would ever craft was the life I was now living entirely on my own terms. My story isn't about revenge. It's about finding your voice, even when everyone around you tries to silence it. It's about drawing lines in the sand, not to keep others out, but to protect the sacred space within yourself. If you've ever felt erased, undermined, or simply used by the people who should have loved you most, I want to hear from you. What was the moment you decided enough was enough? What did you do to reclaim your story? Share your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. Let's create a space where no one has to be silent.